Hi, welcome to Surviving Motherhood. Okay, so I'm going back to the Rescue Mission Chapel this week, and I'm going to finish this series that I've been doing with them. Does the Bible really say that? And the phrase we're going to focus on this time is, again, one I'm sure you've heard. Maybe you've said it yourself. Maybe you've had people say it to you in an effort to comfort and encourage, but it's just not in the Bible. So that statement is, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. Familiar with that one? In response to that statement, I have just one name, and that is Gideon. Do you know the story of Gideon? He was one of Israel's judges. And, well, things had been going pretty badly for the Israelites because they were doing evil in the sight of the Lord. And as their pattern kind of was, they did evil. They got into this despairing position. They called out for help. God sent them a judge. The judge kind of got them back on track and everything was good. And then they started doing evil again, and that's just the way they went. Well, in this case, they have called out to God for help. God comes to this man named Gideon, and he says, "Mighty warrior, come, you're going to save these people." But Gideon says that he is from, I forget the name of the tribe, but he's from the smallest tribe in Israel, the weakest, and he is the least among his clan members, and he's like, who am I? How am I going to do this? So right off the bat, I'm asking, does God really give his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers? Because Gideon was not. In fact, he was the weakest in his clan. That's the way he saw himself. He was, well, quite frankly, kind of a scaredy cat. He was doubting that God really wanted him to do this. He put God through all these different tests. If you really want me to do this, stay here so I can go and do that. And then, okay, now if you really want me to do this, then make this thing get wet and the dry. He was just, I would say, not an ideal candidate for a mighty battle. But God chose him. And then Gideon amassed for himself this great big army of Israelites. I believe the number was something like 32,000. And God says, there's too many here for me to fight this battle for you, so send the ones home who are afraid. So like 22,000 of them leave, so there's 10,000 left. God says, this is still too many, so he whittled it down to 300 men. So there's Gideon, who is of the smallest tribe of Israel. He's the least in his clan, and now he's got an army of 300 people. And they're armed with glass jars and trumpets and torches. Tell me, how would you call that a strongest soldier situation to go and fight this really tough battle? It's all the Midianites and all these people from the eastern countries are coming after them. And, well, to me, that just doesn't sound like a recipe for God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And in fact, that army of 300, they just needed to be faithful. They just needed to obey and do what Gideon led them to do. And by the way, Gideon, through this whole thing, even though he was afraid, even though he was kind of a scaredy cat, he was faithful to God. When he was afraid, he asked God, "Are you sure?" And God said, "Yeah." And so he said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And Gideon was faithful. And the men with him, those 300 men, were faithful. And 300 men, well, I was going to say 300 men defeated the Midianites, but that wouldn't be true. God defeated the Midianites for them. Gideon and his army were faithful to God, and he defeated the enemy. And so, in my understanding of God's word, rather than us saying God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers, I think it would be more accurate for us to say that God gives his toughest battles to his faithful children. And by the way, He fights for them. So if you are facing a tough battle today and you're feeling like you're not the strongest soldier out there, well, that's okay. You don't need to be. What you need to be is faithful to God. Trust in Him and allow Him to fight for you. All right? Now you go. You have a wonderful, Jesus-full day.